Tiawana Brown, a Charlotte City Council member, has been thrust into the national spotlight after a North Carolina grand jury indicted her on federal charges. Brown, 53, alongside her daughters Tiawana Brown, 30, and Anjanette Rouse, 33, faces wire fraud conspiracy and wire fraud charges. The indictment stems from accusations that they fraudulently obtained COVID-19 pandemic relief funds and used the money for personal expenses, including a $15,000 birthday party. Russ Ferguson, U.S. Attorney for the Western District of North Carolina, announced the charges in a May 22 press release. The indictment claims that between April 2020 and September 2021, Brown and her daughters conspired to defraud the Small Business Administration's Economic Injury Disaster Loan (EIDL) and Paycheck Protection Program (PPP). They allegedly filed at least 15 applications using false tax forms and fabricated documentation. In total, they reportedly secured over $124,000 in relief funds. The indictment asserts that rather than using the money for legitimate business needs, as claimed in the applications, the defendants spent the funds on personal luxuries. The most eye-catching detail: that $15,000 birthday party. Brown, however, is standing firm in her defense. Through a statement issued by Christy Puckett of NC Second Chance Alliance, Brown described the charges as a deliberate attempt to sabotage her re-election bid and silence her voice. She stated she would not be tried in the media and expressed trust in the legal process, vowing to have her day in court. At the moment, Brown remains in her city post representing District 3. The City of Charlotte clarified that the alleged activities occurred before her tenure on the council, and they have not been contacted by federal authorities regarding any investigation tied to her current role. USA Today reached out to Brown, the Charlotte mayor, and Brown's attorney but has yet to receive a response. The indictment is a dramatic development in Brown's political journey. She won her seat on the Charlotte City Council in November 2023 and is known as the first formerly incarcerated person elected to the council. Her Facebook bio proudly calls her a fierce defender of truth. Brown's background includes time at Johnson C. Smith University, experience on the board of the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls, and appearances as a featured speaker on Capitol Hill in 2017. But this isn't Brown's first encounter with the legal system. Court records show she was indicted on fraud-related charges back in 1993 and served 4 years in prison. That history, combined with the current charges, paints a complicated picture of a public figure navigating redemption, power, and now, renewed legal trouble. Federal prosecutors allege that the fraudulent activities included not just submitting fake loan applications but also false statements to secure forgiveness for PPP loans. The indictment describes a web of deceit, with funds flowing into bank accounts controlled by Brown and her daughters and then being diverted away from the intended pandemic-related relief purposes. If convicted, Brown and her daughters each face up to 20 years in prison per offense. As of May 23, they were all released on $25,000 bonds. Brown's supporters point to her past work advocating for the formerly incarcerated and say she's being targeted unfairly. Critics, however, argue that if the allegations are proven true, they represent a serious betrayal of public trust, especially from someone who campaigned as a voice for marginalized communities. The city of Charlotte is now in a tense holding pattern. Brown's term runs until December, and it remains unclear whether she will choose to resign or continue serving while facing legal proceedings. The federal investigation has yet to implicate the city or other officials, but the political fallout is already being felt. Local leaders are grappling with the optics of a council member under indictment while trying to reassure the public that city operations remain unaffected. The Brown case taps into broader national debates about pandemic relief fraud, government oversight, and accountability. Since the rollout of COVID-19 emergency programs, federal authorities have ramped up investigations into misuse of relief funds. For Brown, the charges not only threaten her political career but also resurface painful chapters from her past. Her 1993 fraud conviction was a key part of her redemption narrative. Now, it has reemerged in headlines, casting shadows over her achievements and raising questions about patterns of behavior. Observers note that Brown's prominence as the first formerly incarcerated council member adds complexity to the situation. She's long been a symbol of second chances. Now, that symbolism is under severe strain. Meanwhile, the community she serves is watching closely. Supporters have called for due process and fairness, while detractors demand accountability and transparency. Brown's legal team has yet to release a detailed defense strategy, but court filings indicate they intend to contest the charges vigorously. Legal experts suggest the outcome may hinge on the paper trail, bank records, loan documents, and evidence of how the funds were ultimately used. Brown's indictment also highlights the challenges elected officials face when personal and public spheres collide. In this case, the intertwining of family members, her 2 daughters, adds another layer of personal stakes and emotional weight. National media outlets have picked up the story, further amplifying scrutiny on Brown and the Charlotte City Council. Local political commentators are already speculating on whether this scandal will affect upcoming elections or prompt broader investigations into council members' financial dealings. In the broader conversation, Brown's case raises difficult questions. Can someone with a criminal past truly escape that shadow? How do we measure accountability for leaders with personal redemption stories? And what safeguards need to be in place to prevent abuse of emergency government funds? Brown's supporters emphasize her long-standing commitment to advocacy and community service. They argue that the charges represent a selective focus by federal prosecutors and that many public figures have skirted accountability for far worse. On the other hand, public trust is a fragile currency, and accusations of financial misconduct cut deep, especially when tied to funds meant to help struggling businesses survive a global crisis. The indictment is just the beginning of what promises to be a long legal process. Brown's future, both as a public servant and as an advocate for the formerly incarcerated, hangs in the balance. For now, Charlotte residents and political observers alike are left waiting. Will Tiawana Brown weather this storm, or will the weight of the charges bring her promising political career to a crashing halt? Only time